All right, welcome back, everyone. So now we're going to get into our next topic that I love to cover in all my courses, and it's the history of the Greek world. And as you can see here, the first major focus we're going to talk about is how geography impacted the Greek world, which I'm going to get to in a second. But just for all my students, I want to kind of set up what we're going to be doing here, because over the next several lectures, we're going to talk a lot about the ancient Greeks, talk about different ideas, different themes, different objectives that I want you to know on Greek history, mainly between about the years 800 and 400 BC, right? The previous lecture, we had talked about the Mycenaeans and kind of the earliest of Greeks, and then we're going to kind of skip ahead now to about 800 BC to 400 BC when we get into the heart of the Greek world where so many big events are happening, so many amazing stories. But as I do with many of my lecture topics, whether I'm talking about Egypt or the Minoans or Mesopotamia, no, we talk about geography because geography is a theme that's been running through the first part of my semester with you guys. And for people who are just watching this just because they're interested about geography and how geography impacted the Greek world, you could just kind of watch this for itself, I hope, and understand why geography matters so much. And so this is a cool little image actually I have up here. It is from Greece. It's from a picture I actually took when I was in Greece many years ago. And I don't know if you could see here, but on the bottom left here, this is actually a monastery. And on top of these major mountain ranges, they actually had these little monasteries built. Now, this wasn't during ancient Greek time. This comes a little bit later, but I always just love this photo, so I thought I would start with it. So let's get going on how geography impacted the Greek world. So we're going to obviously use some maps and explain all this. And so here are key words. And I guess the first thing to obviously understand when you talk about the Greek world is the fact that Greece is a peninsula, right? Obviously, everybody knows hopefully what a peninsula is. It's a body of land surrounded by three sides of water. And so these are the three waterways. There's going to be a couple elements of the geography you need to know. And as always, as I tell my students, it's not enough just to memorize the geographical features. The whole point of this is to understand how does geography help development of civilization, what impact it has on various elements of life and politics and so forth. And so in this case, these are the three major seas you need to know, right? So make sure you always get them down. You have the Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea, right? So here you have the Ionian Sea, here you have the Aegean Sea, and over here you have the Mediterranean Sea. And these three seas surround Greece. Now you go, why does this matter? And you have this other term here, polis and pluralis poli, and I'm going to get to that in a moment of why this matters as I show you another map and go through this in a little bit more detail. So the deal with the seas, especially the Mediterranean Sea, is seas are different than oceans, right? It's very difficult to navigate an ocean. To cross an entire Atlantic or Pacific Ocean is hard. But the seas are much easier to navigate, which means if you're a Greek person and you're living on the Greek mainland here and you're constantly surrounded by water, it's going to be easier for you to move out. And so one of the effects, and this is where we get into the impacts of geography, of these seas, is it allows the Greeks to spread out. And you see this in this next map really, really well. So let me show you this map. And in this map, what you're seeing is kind of the spread of the Greeks. And everywhere you see in green, you see Greek, quote unquote, colonization in areas where the Greeks moved into. And so you can see it's not just the Greek mainland. The Greeks move all the way over here to Asia Minor, this region of Anatolia or Asia Minor that we see here. And they move all the way to southern Italy, is another area. Obviously, there's a lot of islands in these seas, and they occupy those areas as well. And so you have one force of the Greeks just pushing the Greeks out, right? And I don't remember if I've given you this term before, but it's Anatolia, or it's sometimes known as Asia Minor, right? So Anatolia or Asia Minor, that's what we call this land over here. So you see they get to the coast of that area. Make sure you do want to know those terms as well. Anatolia or Asia Minor, it's basically modern day Turkey. But anyways, that's where they spread. Now, at the same time, there's two factors at work here. One factor is that the Greeks have these seas pulling them apart. The other factor is what is the Greek mainland itself like. And when you take these two factors together, you see the overarching impact on the Greek world. So this part is really important because when you look At the Greek mainland itself, it is very, and you can't really see it on this image well, it's very mountainous. When I do these lectures in class, one tool I like to use is Google Earth. And when you use the Google Earth, I kind of program this Google Earth where it zooms right in here, and I kind of adjust the angles, and you can see everywhere you look on the Greek mountain range, on the Greek mainland, it's mountainous. So why does that matter? Well, if you have, just kind of visualize these and I'm sorry, obviously my drawings are never very good here, but you have massive mountain ranges throughout the Greek world, and you have people living, maybe you have some people living over here, and more people living over here. I'm just kind of drawing a little bit of dots and dashes there, I know. But you can kind of try to visualize if you have mountains and people living between those mountains, that isolates people from one another. So what you end up having are these two factors, right? You have one factor of the seas, which are pulling the Greeks apart, and the other factor is the mountains, which are isolating them. So why does this matter? Well, this is this other word, the polis, that I gave you before. Because the effect of this is when you actually talk about Greek history, especially between 800 and like 400 BC, you don't really talk about the Greeks. Instead, what you're looking at is a series of what we call Greek city-states. The word polis, make sure you get this down, means city-states, right? City-states. And when you say city-states, what does that mean? It is a city, but it's governed individually as its own nation. And so it would be like, Cypress, California, where we're working at, of course, is a city, but it's just got its own government. And then you go over to Garden Grove, and they have their own thing, and Seal Beach, and they have their own thing. And every city has literally its own choice of government. They can have different forms of government, and they can have their own rulers, their own laws. And so you end up with not just one Greek civilization, but in a sense you have scores, hundreds probably, of these little Greek city-states. Now, obviously, in this course, this is a survey course, we don't have time to talk about all of them. So what do we focus on? Well, we focus on two big Greek city-states, two really significant Greek city-states. And the two Greek city-states we like to focus on the most, of course, are going to be Athens over here and Sparta down here. So what we're going to really focus on a lot as we move into our next lectures is looking at Athens, looking at Sparta. Yes, I'm going to talk about some of these other Greek city-states you're going to want to need to know as well, but really focusing on Athens and Sparta and how these two major city-states had a huge role in shaping all of Greek history. But what I really want you to understand so far from this lecture is how the geography was the root cause of why we have this city-state system. It is because of when they were isolated from each other and because of these seas spreading them apart. We're not done talking about geography and how it impacted the Greek world. When we talk about some of the wars and battles the Greeks are going to be involved in later, we're going to see how geography impacted them as well. So that's something to look forward to. But really, the next kind of lecture we're going to talk about is starting our big journey of comparing Athens and Sparta. What about these two city-states? Do they have anything in common? And then, of course, looking at all their differences. And so that's going to be kind of the future lectures we're going to be doing here next. All right, so I hope all that's clear on the geography. I hope everyone enjoyed that and found it interesting. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.